Welcome, everyone. I'm here back for another episode, and it's quite cozy here right now. I just hear some thunder outside. It's raining. I have a cup of tea right next to me, and I sound a little stuffy because I'm just getting out of a cold. But I feel really inspired actually to talk about something. So here we go. Some of you may already know that I have been on this very fascinating journey of human design for many, many years, along with the Gene Keys. And at some point, the astrology started to bubble up for me as my clients started to ask about it, because regular human design in Gene Keys is based on tropical astrology. And apparently, there's also something called sidereal astrology. And while I was never really interested in it for years, at some point, I had a very strong gut feeling about it that there's something there. So I started to dive into it. And over the years, I have learned that tropical astrology is not using what we're actually seeing in the sky. So it used to match what was in the sky over 2000 years ago. But because we have this precession of the equinoxes, which basically means that roughly every 72 years, where the sun is at the spring equinox actually changes. It was at 0 degree Aries over 2000 plus years ago, and today it's somewhere in Pisces. So it's roughly a shift of almost like 30 degree. And anytime when you read in the news that the full moon is in a sign, for example, in Aquarius, most likely it's not in that sign. It's mostly often in the sign before. So it's Capricorn, for example. And for me, that was a little bit of a shock, to be honest, when I realized, what do you mean? We say, oh, the moon is in such and such, but when I look up into the sky, that's not the reality. And I was like, hold on, that doesn't make sense to me. I've always been a very analytical person with math growing up, and I always like things to be accurate and precise. Maybe that's also some Virgo energy in me. I think we all have some of that to some extent. And I started to really question. And in the beginning, I was also like, wow, I cannot believe how easily we humans just believe certain things, you know? And then I started to realize that a lot of people, when you talk about it, I think for quite a reason, feel attacked, right? When I say, well, but that's not correct. I don't think that tropical astrology is accurate. And there are a lot of different viewpoints, obviously, out there. And one thing that I have been always very, very big on is that I want to respect your opinion. I want to respect my opinion. I want to respect everybody's opinion. That's really why I initially resonated so much with human design, because it's this idea that we are all different. And it's also normal that we have different belief systems. It's also normal that we resonate with different things, right? We are on our own evolution. Just like I resonated with the tropical version of human design for many, many years, and I wasn't even interested in anything else. But now that I have really understood and really questioned the astrology behind, I have personally found such a deep resonance with true sidereal astrology in particular, which has been created and been put out there already for over 10 years by Ethan Chimenti. And you can check him and his work out at masteringthezodiac.com. And just recently, he actually finalized his calculations because, astrologers come up with their own calculations, how they do it. And he explained what stars he's using and the boundaries of the constellations and everything. He's also using 13 signs versus 12 signs that we have in tropical. For me, this true sidereal astrology is a representation of what nature looks like. Very simple. And I often see a lot of arguments why tropical astrology is right and why one is wrong. And that to me is not a conversation I want to engage in much. I'm just sharing with you like what I deeply resonate with at this point. And today was really interesting. Some of my clients and also from Ethan, I heard that there was an article from New York Times about this phenomenon that what you think your sun sign is per tropical astrology is most likely not the sun sign that was up in the sky where the sun was when you were born. For me, for example, I have always been told that I'm an Aquarius, but really when I was born, the sun was actually in Capricorn. And I also understand we are all of the signs, just like in human design. You're not just the human design type. That's just like the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more, you know? But we start to attach, we start to identify with these archetypes very strongly. And what I have found is that when we realize something like this, oh my God, all my life I thought I'm an Aquarius and now I'm in a Capricorn, like there is this identity or ego death that's happening. And I have personally experienced this over this last year, especially with human design and also my clients. You guys will know this because we have been using these true sidereal calculations for human design and with different softwares. And because it wasn't standardized at that time, we played with like slightly different values, and then your chart can slightly change. Your profile may be a little bit different. For some people, also the type can change because anytime when you're on a cusp from one to another gate, voila, just with a tiny change in the number you enter, you can have a completely different human design type, right? Just another reason I think that's more of a different conversation. Why I also take the human design types just very, very lightly rather than over identifying with that, you know, because the whole chart has so much more depth and so much more nuance, just like an astrology chart as well. And, anyways, going back to this article and also Instagram post from New York Times about this precession of the equinoxes and that most likely your actual sign is different than what you thought your entire life. So I started to check out the comments and people were quite upset. I think people started to feel threatened. And I really get it because imagine you have built a business based on tropical astrology and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, this is not what it looks like up in the sky. This was my experience a year and a half or 2 years ago when I discovered this myself because I had built a business completely based on tropical human design and gene keys, you know? But I already was in a path of realizing that this is all a blend of archetypes, and I wasn't that over identifying with the types already anymore. So maybe it was a little bit of an easier shift for me, right? And you find a lot of angry people and very strong arguments why this is all wrong and this is like AI written and this is like spam and stuff like that, right? And I find it quite interesting because what I have also learned from this deep inner healing work, you know, when we work with triggers, the not so fun stuff oftentimes, when something triggers us the most, that's something for you. There's something to look into, and oftentimes we push it back first. And I can tell you also from my experience, especially with the clients I have been working with, it may take some time for you to be ready for this. So if you feel like I cannot deal with this reality check right now, that's okay. Maybe later on you do that. And I have some clients, they hear from me about true sidereal human design and like, that's cool, but I want to stick to tropical. And that's fine for me. You know, I'm not here to tell you what you have to use because I'm not in your body. I don't live your experience. What resonates with you is not what has to resonate with me, right? Because otherwise, I'm really operating from shadow consciousness where I'm telling that everybody has to follow this one way. I can tell you what I stand for and what feels right to me, and I'm inviting you to check it out. I'm actually inviting you right now. Like, check the sky, look up into the sky. There's so many apps out there these days for free where you can actually see where the planets are up in the sky. Another example is Pluto. Pluto is not in Aquarius. It's not. Look up in the sky, you know? So, another thing that came up for me too when I was contemplating this is that Is tropical astrology actually sustainable? Because right now we have like about like a one sign difference. So it's maybe not that big of a deal because, it's in this one sign and then it moves into the next. So it's catching up over the next month for the sun. If it's with the moon, it catches up much quicker because the moon moves through the sky very fast. So it takes about 29 days, right, to move through the entire 360 degrees in the sky. So, but if we are going into the future, so let's say in 8,000 or 13,000 years, obviously way beyond our lifetime, but if we continue to follow tropical astrology, then what's going to happen at some point is that it's going to be so off. We may say, oh, the sun right now is in Aquarius, like beginning of February. But where the sun actually is in the sky, at that point in time, maybe exactly the opposite in the sky in Leo-ish. And it's going to go the entire circle. And at some point, it may match again with the 0 degree Aries. And I think that cycle is about 26,200 years or something, that it goes back to where it used to be. But that's why for me, it's not sustainable in any way or form. And my own interpretation of why also society, in a way, is often so rushed because everything that we are following with tropical astrology is literally of what's not there yet. It's ahead of what's actually up in the sky. It's always like this 30-degree more into the future. And I'm wondering, like, is this why we are so rushed as a society? Because somehow we keep telling ourselves these are the energies right now that are influencing us, right? And also want to make a point, like astrology is not here, for me at least, to predict anything. It's rather here to support us to feel more seen in what we experience and the choices that we make, and also how we see ourselves, that we find this confirmation about how we feel about our true nature. And this is really how I use all of these systems, human design, gene keys, and astrology as well. Because when I feel deeply seen at an inner level, I have more courage to be who I truly am. And I'm trying no longer so much to fit in and to be like everybody else because I am different. You're different. We are all unique. And I just find so much validation in the contemplation of these archetypes and these patterns that I see in these birth charts for me in astrology and human design in particular. So that's just some food for thought. And also, another really big reason why human design always resonated so much with me is because it blends both spirituality and science. Because quantum physics, for example, is a huge component of human design. And for astrology itself, for me, the true sidereal astrology is really beautiful because it's also for me a blend of spirituality and science. Because, yeah, it's using these spiritual archetypes that humans have come up over the centuries. And we are looking up into the sky and we're measuring this, we're looking what it really looks like, and we're actually using the accurate placements of where things are rather than what it looked like 2000 years ago. And also in tropical, we have these even 30-degree signs, which is also human-made simplification, but it's not how reality really looks like. And I always have this very strong pull towards nature, and nature has irregularities, right? Nature is not just everything is even cookie cutter like. So in true sidereal astrology, when you look up into the sky and look at the constellations, you're going to see that some constellations like Virgo and Pisces are very huge. And then Aries is very small, Scorpio, Ficus is very small as well. Also Libra is more on the smaller side. And that feels right to me. That feels like nature. Another analogy that came up for me when I was contemplating over the last month this phenomenon that I see in astrology is that it's such a shock for us, right? When we realize we have been just blindly following something and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like this is not what it is. It's also often in the food industry where we're being told something. An example that came to me, we have been told for years that we should eat margarine and no, fats from animal that is, or butter is bad for you and things like that. And then at some point, after people just follow this advice blindly, people are starting to realize that often like these so-called healthy vegetable oils are actually really bad for us because they're highly processed and modified and all of it. And then genetically modified in the whole thing as well. And here you go. And then at some point people are coming out, oh, well, the original way, butter straight from the cows that eat grass, how it was intended by nature, is actually quite okay. It's actually what we're supposed to be doing. And so what I'm trying to say is that with food also, everything that is very, very close to nature is usually the most aligned way for us humans because we're also a part of nature. And any time where we really drift away from nature, when things become too artificial, which often happens because it's easier, it's simpler, it makes more money, creates more profits, but then it's full of chemicals, it's not aligned with our human nature, and it doesn't vibe with our organism really well. And it's very normal that in the beginning we have a lot of people that are then against it, and there's kind of this fight going on between what is right and what is wrong. And of course, everybody has a choice. I think with food, we still have this today, right? Not everybody's going to tell you, like, yeah, just eat butter that comes from pasture-raised cows, of course, in moderation. You're still going to have probably people that are going to tell you, like, no, you should, fry everything in canola oil. I'm like, okay, you think this and you do this and I do me, that's okay. So it is normal that we have these polarities in life. And I think we will all going to see, we're not going to all just agree on one thing. But I do think it's our job to speak up and share with people when we have a very eye-opening moment where we're like, oh man, like I thought it was this way, but I was never questioning it. I was just blindly following it. And hey, I have been given these beautiful eyes. We also have been giving all these tools so we can actually check what's up in the sky. Because I think not every one of us has like a telescope in the garden, like I don't, for example. So somehow this is how it's meant to go. We totally fall off nature and we're then being forced to go back to nature and we're given the tools to wake up to that. So for me, this all has to do with awakening. We're awakening to nature. We're awakening to some truth that I think at this point it's very hard to deny, if you ask me. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you today. Again, this is not to make a point. This is not to convince you in any way or form. It's simply an invitation to, I guess, listen to what I have to share and you make the decision for yourself. You get to decide what you want to work with or what you feel like supports you. And of course, today the conversation was all about human design, gene keys, and astrology in this context. And you can decide to work with both. And then at some point, you're going to decide what really resonates with you and what you want to stick with. That's the beautiful thing of having your own personal choice, and you can make those decisions. So, with that, I hope you have something to contemplate on. I will also share a couple of links from Mastering the Zodiac where you can check out about how this is being calculated and this midpoint method that Ethan just released a little bit over a month ago. So these calculations are now officially finalized. And now we also have an official way how to calculate the human design charts. I will also give some further updates on this. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening. And I'm excited to be back with you all on the next episode. Ciao, everyone.